There's always a bit of excitement in the air leading up to the launch of a new nDreams VR game. They're an interesting studio that's been making great VR games almost since day one, but there always seems to be one glaring issue that keeps their great games from being truly awesome. Their newest PlayStation VR2 release, Synapse, is no different. It might very well be nDreams' best game yet, but one or two flaws keep it from perfection.
Get me out of here!
When you start Synapse, you find yourself on a beautiful beach, rich in color, as you slowly make your way inside of a house that sports great lighting and detail. But don't get used to it, you're not going to see any of this again for quite a while. The voiceover starring the legendary David Hayter and Jennifer Hale will introduce you to what you're doing, which is essentially infiltrating someone's mind with the goal of breaking down his defenses and retrieving some secret intel. I hate to say it, but it's honestly all background noise. And it's nice to have, but just didn't do a whole lot for me narratively. And soon after, Synapse introduces you to its skill tree and upgrade system, revealing its roguelite structure to anyone who didn't know what they were getting into. Now, I'm a huge fan of roguelites, especially the ones that use the formula in new and interesting ways, which Synapse very much does. You've got a jetpack joyride style mission structure of bonus objectives to keep in mind while you're playing through the levels. Kill 20 enemies while taking cover, use enemies' own grenades against them, crush 30 enemies with mental blocks, that kind of thing. The more challenges you complete, the more skill points you get, which unlock new abilities called mind hacks. Now, usually in these types of games, there's a ton of filler. But here, everything you unlock is awesome, and every upgrade actually feels substantial. After upgrading your skills, you head back out, taking down enemies in whatever way you can. You've got a weapon in one hand and wield telekinesis with the other. Both are pretty powerful from the get-go, and you should be able to take down quite a few levels before ever dying. You can run, climb, and take cover, and you can even move platforms with your telekinesis. For such a fast-paced first-person shooter though, I would have loved the ability to jump, crouch, and slide into cover. Grabbing a surface to pull yourself in and out of cover feels great when you're attacking from a distance, but when you're running from a boss's Gatling gun, having to grab a surface to hide feels really cumbersome. Luckily, it's an easy thing to forgive because the moment-to-moment gameplay here just feels so satisfying. I almost guarantee, though, that everyone will have a different experience with Synapse. As a roguelike, there's a certain amount of randomness, mostly stemming from which perks you get during each run. Some are really helpful, like bullets that bend and home in on your target, or the ability to hold an enemy with telekinesis and have enemies attack them instead of you. These are kind of like the best case scenario. If you happen to encounter them, you could probably beat each run on your first try, but I wasn't lucky enough to get them more than once ever, meaning it took me over 10 hours to play through the requisite 3 runs it takes to beat the entire game. All the levels sport a unique grayscale art style with blasts of neon pink and blues. This gives Synapse a look and feel all its own. The words hanging in the sky reflect off the black marble surfaces, the crazy statues looming out in the ocean. It's simply a beautiful game. I will say some of the later levels don't look nearly as cool as the introductory ones, but I still enjoyed the variety. It's a fairly sharp looking game too, and despite running reprojected at 120 FPS, I didn't notice any severe blurring or ghosting. Although my new VR lenses have negated a lot of that for me anyway.
Attack! They fight without honor! Backup deployed!
The option to use eye tracking to target your telekinesis feels surprisingly natural, and the adaptive triggers on the Sense controllers are used in such a subtle way. You can actually feel the difference between telekinetically holding a grenade and a barrel. The resistance changes for them, making it far easier to accidentally pull just a little too hard and blow up the grenade, whereas blowing up the barrel requires a much more deliberate motion.
Outsider, get them! No!
I think a lot of my complaints about Synapse are more about personal preference than anything. When I was playing, I kept thinking about how I would have designed the game differently. For me, a good roguelike will make you feel overwhelmed and severely underpowered and kill you in the first 5 to 10 minutes. But on my first attempt, I played for over an hour and a half without dying. It's almost as if you're too powerful right from the start of the game, which makes it feel great to play, but doesn't quite offer the feeling of progression that it could have. I would have loved if it took me an hour just to unlock telekinesis, instead of having it right from the start of the game. There's only 4 weapons and a few enemy types, and asking the player to play through the game 3 times to beat it is obviously an artificial way to extend the length of the game. Strangely, I didn't really have a problem with any of this. I do, however, take issue with the one and only boss fight that takes place midway through your first run. It's a great experience, and I love how you have to use telekinesis in conjunction with your weapons, but there's never another moment like that in Synapse again. You kill the boss, and then he starts showing up over and over and over throughout the rest of the game as a regular enemy. And I guess this could be considered a spoiler, so cover your ears if you need to. The last level just throws what seems like hundreds of enemies at you, and doesn't even have a final boss fight of its own, which means completing the last level of each run ends up feeling a little tedious rather than monumental. In case it's not clear, I absolutely loved my time with Synapse, and nDreams did a great job of putting their own spin on a now classic genre. Once I started playing, I couldn't stop, basically only taking a break every 4 hours or so to let my controllers charge up again. That said, the $35 price tag implies content that's simply not there, and a final boss, for me at least, would have been a total game changer. So I hope that Synapse 2 is being considered, because this is a formula that works really, really well, and needs to be explored further.
You think you have won?